And I will send out a follow-up email to everyone that registered. They'll get the recording and they'll get the deck that Brian uses in the discussion. Um, Please feel free to ask questions anytime during the discussion. If you'll put them in chat, I'll monitor the chat along with Brian and Emily and Danny. We'll all monitor the chat and ask them and ask the questions when it's appropriate. And then also, we will try really hard to leave time for questions at the end of the discussion, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. But anyway, feel free to put your questions in chat. I just want to share a little bit about ESA before we get started. For the past 10 years, we've partnered with ADP to build this executive community, and it's global, of nearly 3,000 participants. And we deliver world-class thought leadership like Brian, um, and exposure to innovative technologies that are shaping the future of work. We're unique as a network in that we bring CHROs, CIOs, COOs, CEOs, any C-suite executive together that cares about work tech. And we believe that because we believe that they all have to be in lockstep with each other to be able to deliver the kind of worker experience that's necessary to attract and retain talent. Finally, I'm really proud of our board positioning membership, and we provide that to executives. We provide many of the resources that they need to navigate to their perfect board seat. We also bring startup technologies every month to the group for advisory roles. But check it out on our website. We'd love to have you join us if you're not already a member. So today I'm honored to welcome Brian Elliott back. He's been with us as a thought leader several times. He's also a presenter in our board program. He's amazing. He's the CEO of Work Forward, executive, and he's pretty busy, you guys. He's executive in
Too
residence at
busy.
Charter, and I will send out a little bit about Charter because if you haven't gotten involved in Charter, you should. It's amazing. And he's a recognized expert on the future of work, a best-selling author of How the Future Works. He spent 25 years in tech as a startup CEO and executive at Google and Slack before co-founding Future Forum. Brian is amazing.
I gotta stop. I gotta like shorten that bio and just like cut three-quarters
You
of
are
that
so
out before
busy. I
you.
just asked him if
It's
he had a podcast, and he said no.
no.
I'm surprised. Anyway, Brian, you're amazing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can have Emily and Danny introduce themselves as well. But
Yeah.
you guys, you are in for a treat. He's an amazing researcher and has lots and lots of insights to share. Brian, it's all yours.
Thanks. Thanks, Cindy. Thank you. Good to see some familiar faces. A few of you have met before through this. A few of you I know through multiple different forums. Hey, Robert. Cindy and I were talking a few months back about, where are we in the state of like AI transformation, what's going on, and what are people wrestling with? And the topic we came back to is who owns AI transformation? How do you lead it? How do you guide it? Who guides it? And so today, thrilled to have Emily and Danny here with us to talk about that from a couple different perspectives, both the perspectives of their companies as well as their roles. So we're going to get into that. Emily, do you want to go first and just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Porter. I'm the Chief People Officer at the Waldinger Corporation. I have been in progressive HR and marketing roles my entire career, and I have the opportunity to co-lead our AI work here at Waldinger, and excited to be part of the conversation today.
And Danny.
Hi, this is Danny. I'm CEO for Map Communications, and it says former CIO. I used to be a CIO, and that's what we'll talk about how the mashing of the two roles helps in the AI transformation process. And we are really a technical operator working to make sure our AI transformation moves forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about how this can happen.
Fantastic. Really looking forward to it. And as we get into this, people should participate. Toss your questions in there as we go along. And we're going to get to a couple places where we're going to ask you all some questions anyway. So just, be prepared. This can be a little bit on the interactive side of life. I'm going to talk about where we are overall in AI adoption. It's funny. Danny's got a set of slides. I got a set of slides. We kind of looked at and compared across the two of them. You can find all kind of stats that say that companies' adoption of AI is really high if you take a surface level view of it. 88% of companies, depending on what survey you look at, have some element of like AI adoption inside of their organization. 75% of them, I love this stat, Danny, of S&P 500 companies are mentioning AI on their earnings calls. I honestly wonder what the other 25% are doing because it seems like 100 to me these days. It's kind of a de-rigor thing that you have to do. Then you go to the other side of the equation, and depending on whose study you read, the number that you get in terms of like consistent, ongoing positive ROI is a single digit number. This one's from an Atlassian study earlier this year that said that 6% of companies say that they're getting consistent ROI. BCG's got a study that says 5% of people. I saw another study the other day that said like there's about 39% that say they've gotten some positive benefit. But if you take that and say, is the positive benefit more than 5% on revenue or costs, it gets down to a single digit number again. So there's just still this massive gap between sort of desire and actual impact. And we'll get into some of the whys and wherefores, but one of the questions that sits underneath that that ends up being really important is how do you own it and drive it? I was at a tech conference yesterday talking on a panel with a couple of people, and there's a bottoms up and top down thing that have to meet each other, right? You need people to adopt and use AI, but you also need leadership to sort of show the way and to steer it and to resource it. So that's what we're going to focus on today because the gap really is the management side of things. The technology, bluntly, in terms of where we are today, in terms of state of the art, is already ahead of where we need it to be to actually have impact from a business perspective. So most of this comes back to management, leadership. Where do we apply this? How do we resource it? What do we do with it? So, Danny, I'm going to let you speak to this because it is your slide. You're the one that actually came up with the six, your perspective at least, on six different ways in which you can guide leadership on AI transformations. Why don't you walk us through this a little bit?
Sure. And guys, this is data available. It's just trying to compose and see how we can look at it from a data perspective. And if you look at the six models that are in the field and you can find success story for each, which should tell you that model isn't the variable. Like Brian mentioned, it's really how we execute it. Now try to focus just on the failure column. You'll see figurehead, technology project, veto, performative, blind spots, or even diffuse. There is one failure mode written in six different ways. Someone was accountable without the authority to act on it. So again, just an advice or my suggestion is appointing just a chief AI officer is not the solution. It is whoever you name, give them the budget, the headcount, people to work on the project, and the authority to kill the project. That's the most important part. Because if there is no EBITDA improvement or there is no real-time savings, that project needs to be killed. The MIT study that everybody keeps talking about, that a good amount, 90% of the AI projects are failing. If somebody looked at the IT projects, that's about the same number. It's really the execution and who can actually put a real workflow change is important. So the right to stop something is the only proof the accountability is real. Otherwise, you are just putting somebody in a position to execute it. And all of those changes, in our opinion, is really going to drive the momentum towards a transformative project and hence the AI transformation portion of it. And if you look at this data right here, one instance is federated versus centralized, where JP Morgan went from 0 to 250,000 users getting Copilot licenses with no mandate. But roughly 7 in 10 executives lack the visibility into what AI is actually being used for. Is it really just improving how they write the emails? Is it just improving how they are trying to compose certain things? Or is it really helping develop the case study before meeting a wealth management team meeting a customer? Those are the use cases, and you need to understand the workflow behind it. So both halves are true. That is the trade you're choosing for, right? And the point in this table is just not to recommend a model. It's the failure mode is identical across all six of them. Each one fails the same way. Someone is named and nobody has a decision rights. And that's the key issue over here. While we are talking about studies, if you look at the McKinsey, they found that it's more than the title, it's the senior leader ownership. AI high performers are 3 times more likely to say senior leaders demonstrate ownership and commitment to AI initiatives. And the workflow redesign, only 21% have fundamentally redesigned the workflow because you're just throwing AI on an existing process that is not going to work. So really redesigning the workflow and giving this entire project to somebody who has authority to either make it work or kill the project if it does not work. That's really the true success that we see from here.
So, Danny, what may not surprise the audience is that the executive who was the CIO, who's now the CEO, happens to have the CEO-led model. But what got you there in the first place?
With regards to when we are dealing with the project transformation, and one of the projects I'll give you with a little bit of an example here is we were trying to build a account health score for our customers. And what we found out is it's not really the account health score, it was really the definition of how the accounts were being aggregated or affiliated. And that resulted into somebody trying to say this is not the right project. So we had to sit down and explain that this project needs to be redesigned in such a way that A, there has to be a accountability and there has to be a right design in the project.
Yeah.
So bringing in the right people and bringing in the right resources and bringing in the budget and the technology know-how to execute it was really important in my opinion. And that was really, really, really helpful. And its transformation depends way more than the technology. It requires redesigning the workflow that I mentioned in business processes. And one of the most important thing on a CEO side or on a business side of the house is you need to talk with the people to ensure that the jobs are not impacted. There is a job security. And then the technical skills to actually build the solution is more important. And it goes back to the 3 Ps, right? The people, process, and product. And that's where it was really helpful for us to work in that whole owned by CIO, owned by a particular department, because the department really is the subject matter expert, but the actual execution comes with somebody who has the knowledge of how the technology can be implemented.
Yeah. So I've seen like a lot of different variants on this, and I've done panel discussions with people. I mean, you've got the chief work officer model where you put one person over both the HR, IT, and workplace functions and consolidate the whole thing together. But then you have to have a rarity of skills in terms of making that happen. That's happened in a couple of pharma companies. More often, what I'm seeing is some form of divided ownership. Emily, you as the chief human resource officer share the responsibility with your CIO at Waldinger. How does it work for the two of you? How do you bring those different perspectives together?
Yeah, we do share it. And it was really born out of one of our 5-year goals by 2030 as an organization is to gain 1 million hours worth of capacity in the organization. And so what that means is we have a lot of skilled trades in the business. I'm a privately held company. We have 3 different industries that we are in. And a number of them involve skilled trades. And so what we knew we needed to do was create additional capacity because the number of individuals in the skilled trades has been declining and we really needed a stronger workforce. So how were we going to go ahead and do that? So we set out to do this 1 million hours goal. And I was really on the transformation and enablement side. And my partner, who's the CIO, was on the technical side of things. And so the two of us come together and are really in lockstep around what are we doing to drive these initiatives forward? How does that look? But because we have 3 very separate and distinct businesses that are underneath of those, we do have a governance structure in place to really allow us to be able to make sure that we are serving our operational partners in the right way, that we're helping them find that competitive advantage with some of the different components that we're deploying, and then thinking about it from a how is that getting adopted and enabling our teams.
How does that governance process work? Like who all's on that in that governance committee? What's the charter for it? Who gets veto over what elements of what you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a charter document for it. This is not, they don't have decision-making rights. They have recommendation. It's a recommendation body to myself and the CIO. And then ultimately, if there is a dispute, it's to our CEO. And with that, that's individuals that are within each of our different divisions who have accountability for driving performance forward, but are also individuals that think differently about how could we evolve the business.
Yeah.
And so that is who is at that table for us. We do have a few others that are across our shared services organization. But again, it's about those individuals that are somewhat comfortable being disruptive in terms of within their own organization. And that is not, so I know this is being recorded, but that is not any of my division presidents that are there. It is somebody that is there number two.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that. Yesterday, I was with, this was public, so I can name the companies, General Motors, AstraZeneca, and MasterCard. And to a person, they had someone who was one down from the C-suite who was a change maker. That was like the lead person, bluntly sort of stirring the pot in some ways, right? Had sufficient time and experience in the company themselves that people respected them from above and below, but were that sort of like, you might say, a little more spiky personality, pushy on things that was going to drive things forward. Danny, are there things like that within your organization? Are there people that you turn to, or how do you, and also like, how does the people team play a role in what you're doing?
So similar to what you just mentioned, is there is a committee would come and say, here are the projects that we would recommend, but ultimately it's going to be a joint collaboration between the IT team and then the CEO team office, really understanding what is really going to bring a true improvement. Because you have seen several examples where everybody wants to bring in a transformation project. Transformation has been around for a long time. We have talked about business process management, BPM projects that we have all seen in our past, but ultimately it's really, has that workflow actually needed? Can that be improved? And that can bring inward or outward facing improvements. Is that really going to add value? So there has been some contention because everybody wants and feels that their project from each department is important. But at the end, it comes, if there is a tiebreaker needed, it just comes at the board level, to be very frank. It
Yeah.
has been escalated even at that level to make sure we do the right things, because staying busy is very easy to do, but adding value and a bit improvement is really the only way we see it to measure it.
Yeah. What's your yardstick for that then? Is it profitability, growth, quality, employees? Like how do you think about what you're measuring?
Profitability, obviously, and also the time savings. So really, if it's going to reduce the number of cycles that an employee is spending, and that time can be reused somewhere else, that's also a profitability that we measure. So, and at the end of the day, who is the winner? Is that something we are doing just for the sake of it, or is the customers going to value out of the entire process? And that's the key thing. So really looking for three important things: dollar sign and the time which is equivalent to dollar, and then the customer satisfaction.
Can you walk us through one of your projects? Like what happened from an end-to-end perspective?
Sure. So I mentioned about our health score project. So we built an account health score project for client relationship, and it's more like a customer 360. And from the technology perspective, we use Snowflake models for prediction algorithms and data normalization and finding out those traits. It worked in most cases. but for high volume and affiliated accounts, the triggers fired for account structure and setup reasons, and that had nothing to do with the actual risk because you would see a cluster of accounts that were used from the usage perspective or from their account setup perspective, they look like they are low volume, but it was really they were all clustered together. So on the score, once the score cried wolf, teams stopped trusting it. Once that happened, even the right signals failed to drive uh, action. So
Yeah.
building the health score was less about creating another AI model and more about proving whether it could improve the EBIT or the real savings, right? So that meant putting real resources behind it, and that meant data cleanup. I've been a very big proponent since last 5 years, 6 years when the AI and the machine learning came out, where we wanted before AI came out, machine learning, we could did not really do any of those things with regards to data lake or building out data pipelines if we did not have clean data. So we moved towards ensuring we had the right data cleanup in process, clear data labeling and clear data definitions, and enough ownership to decide whether the project deserved to continue. So the team came back up and said, okay, we now understand where the problem is. Then we changed the flow a little bit and then we started re-implementing it again. And then there was a success. So the
How'd you prove trust to the people who are the recipients of the reports? Because I've seen this in other organizations where if your first implementation's on bad data, it's the thing you said that you blow trust, but then re-earning it can actually be harder. What'd you do to get there?
So it was harder, and I'll be honest, it wasn't a really you wake up next day and they started trusting this. It's really took us time to prove it, to
Yeah.
say, okay, if you are seeing that there is going to be a churn because of this is factor, wait for X amount of months, and you saw that prediction came true. Same thing would be with the revenue or volume, and we had to prove that through with the right data. So the curves were kind of aligning prediction versus actual, and that's when everybody started trusting and going in that same direction. So it's just it was creating wrong decisions. We had to prove and show them this is the right thing to do. So the accountable owners needed the authority to fix the issues, to fix the trigger points, and change the workflow. It goes back to the same thing. Either we could have killed it, but then it was really people who cried wolf. They might have said, go ahead, this does not work, cancel it. But then we understand what the true issue was, what the underlying problem was data labeling. We fixed that, and it's a success thereafter.
Rick asks, are there inputs to that ROI equation of time and cost savings only, or is it also an attempt to quantify improvement in an outcome, in the quality of an outcome?
All of the above, Rick. Excellent question, because ultimately what the outcomes of this were just amazing. And this would be for any business. From a ROI perspective, you have a happy customer, they are going to go refer somebody, continue using services and great reviews. And at the same time, what we also found out is somebody was really using our services, but their structure was not well planned for their growth. And we reached out and we came out as true partners.
Hmm.
We also able to provide certain inputs from the data that we collected from our customers. And we came back and said, look, guys, this is some issues that we are seeing from your clients that are calling us about your product that you're offering. And this is the insights that we can share. And they had no clue. So it's really building up that customer relationship. And at the same time, it brings more clear visibility for our customer service team members to predict what is coming. So it's not really they're going in blind. And that feeds directly into their quarterly business review. So when they go in, they have exact details where the customer is trending, what they need to do,
Carl,
what are their pain points, and go
I'm
prepare
good.
with
Just one
with the
second. Let me
solution.
put the other call on hold. I was listening to something. Yeah.
Emily, what's the yardstick that you guys use? You and your CIO are sitting over the top of a portfolio. Everybody knows that there's way more ideas on these things typically than there are resources to pull them off. What do you guys use to decide?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Danny talked about. We're really looking at that. Is that a high value ROI case for us? And measuring that through what is that going to do for profitability? What is that going to do for productivity? All of those kind of elements are what we take into play with that to be able to identify, okay, where do we go from here? And then for us, it's also what is speed to market?
Hmm.
How quickly can we get some of these in and make a competitive advantage for us? And so it's also thinking about how is this going to help us and be able to achieve what we need to achieve? And so we make some bets on those things as well.
The data center construction business is a bit of a busy one these days.
It's a very busy one these days. So very, very busy one these days. And so finding ways to be able to help them take a critical advantage of this once in a lifetime opportunity where there's trillions of dollars pouring into that is definitely something that does leave us into,
Yeah.
okay, we've got to, we got to accelerate some of their projects along.
Yeah. I mean, I think that may be what ties back to your earlier comment about you've got, and in the prep call you referenced, you've got senior leaders who are like, we've been using hammers for 100 years. The tooling works. Why do we need this thing? How did you get them over the line? How do you bring them along in that conversation?
Yeah, it is an evolution, and I will tell you it's not a revolution. And it's something that we are working our way through. We're an organization, when you have a manufacturing, you have a construction division, and you have a service division, we talk a lot about best practice.
Yeah.
And so these are the best practices of what we need to do. And nobody really questions the best practice. What that does, though, from a culture standpoint, is it makes it really difficult to challenge, is this still the best practice, or is this something that we've been doing for 100 years and it's something that we're going to continue to do? And that was the area that I faced and that we continue to face with some of our with different leaders and different groups in terms of, hey, this is working for us. Why do we need to disrupt us? And we talk a lot about the whole adage of, if it could have been a faster horse or a
Yeah.
car, type of thing. Like, what are we trying to do here and step back? So we've had to ask ourselves a lot of questions of, are we solving the right problem? And are we just putting speed on a bad process? Are we just making it go a little faster? Or are we finding a new way in which we are doing things? And that has really been something that we have had to spend a lot of time on. And so I feel like there's this aspect that everybody's like, oh, it's this AI, it's all about the technology. It's really about some of those, what problems are we really trying to solve? Are we solving the right problems? And are those going to be the things that catapult us forward? And so we're not just looking at the bright, shiny, good idea, but no, these are really things that are happening. So it's building off of some of that mindset within the organization.
I want to come back to that mindset question, Eric. Let us tackle your question a little bit first, which is is there research out there that addresses the fully loaded cost of tokens? Or like, what's the cost of this thing versus we know what a fully loaded human is? The answer is there's not. Like, this world is changing so rapidly, and even tech firms that I've been doing work with and talking with 3 months ago very rapidly started scrambling back to how do we contain and control costs because they're escalating fast in terms of usage. Um, the ROI question is, but what you guys are both getting at, which is there's a cost underneath this. And what I'm hearing, I think, is how do we make sure that we are targeting that cost at high value targets? Is that one way of thinking about it?
Yeah, it is for us. I mean, one of the things that we've put together is we have over 700 technicians that are in vans all across our organization. And we developed a technician chatbot. So that allows them, when they're out on their own doing these calls, to be able to have information and resources and kind of a support in their pocket. That pinging that, though, was we knew that was going to be a cost component for us just in terms of token utilization, what that was going to mean when you have 700 of them doing that. But then it was, if we can get them, though, to do one more call a day because they can wrap it up and they can get faster, that overall ROI completely flips for us. We have paid for the chatbot after 3 months by
Right.
simply doing that. And so, but I will tell you, that was a battle a little bit for us because when we started doing this, everybody was talking about token utilization. And it was, well, how many tokens are this going to be? What's the cost of that? What are we going to do? And so there was a, do we really want to turn this on? Because once you flip it on, you can't turn it off for this group if they go to use it.
Yeah.
We piloted it, but that conversation and that understanding about what is the cost of this really created a swirl amongst a lot of our different leaders as they tried to figure out, is this really the right thing for us to go ahead and implement?
Yeah. Danny, what's your take on on how you think about the cost side of it?
So, Brian, there are two aspects to this, and some of our attendees over here on the AI front, it's inward looking, meaning you're trying to improve your internal processes and be transformative. And there are outward, meaning you are really trying to create a product, and how do you lead that entire discussion? For us, it's both ways because we are developing a product and it comes with a whole different set of problems altogether to begin with because you're now talking about, are you following the right regulatory requirements? Are you making sure there is a right data being collected? Is that a right amount of zero data retention policies? Your data is not being used for any kind of LLM. So all of those decisions that come in, somebody has to have the ability to make the yay or nay decision and say, okay, we understand that this is a risk, here's a compensating control,
Mhm.
and here's how we'll move forward. So the ROI discussion obviously comes in. There is a security framework question that comes in, but with the current token utilization and how the tokens are being calculated, it's a math in its own world.
Yeah.
Can get crazy, but the true value that the product is providing is what we are looking at it right now to begin with, because our mindset is the product actually going to work? The cost portion of it will figure out as we move forward, because if the acceptance is not there, somebody asked about the employees able to use it. Yes, employees should be comfortable to use it. And in the next example, I'll give you about one example specific where we thought we are doing the right thing, but there were certain things that we had to look into. So ROI calculations absolutely necessary, but before that comes, is that product that you are going to re-engineer, would that be actually used effectively?
Yeah. We'll come back to that second part. One of the favorite um, analogies I heard on this was we had a HBS professor, Yavor Bojanov, on stage in February, and he said one of the way he describes this to students is you want to focus on high value targets. And the way to think about it is you can't feed a squirrel enough to turn it into an elephant. You know, 1,000 flowers bloom, pilot everything, test everything, just results in a whole bunch of pilots that are hard to control and uncertainty, as opposed to pick your targets and know where you have opportunity. Emily's is escalation of time frame, right? Like time to market matters a lot, our ability to build faster. Danny's describing account health and getting at it. I do want to get into the psychological safety part though, because that's part of where Emily was going and where Danny was getting with trust. And there's just like a massive amount of this that's human-centered change. Emily, one of the things you talked about was you guys also have super users.
Mhm.
Can you describe what those people look like, how you found them, what they do for you, how that's worked?
Yeah. I think it's, Brian, it goes back to a little bit about what you said at the beginning when you talked about both, this is both of, a bottom up and a top down approach is how you've got to do that. And so one of the things that we looked at was who are the people that are out there in our business today that are already doing this, that are kind of I'm doing it and not telling anybody because I don't want somebody to tell me no. I'm not seeking permission. I will seek forgiveness when I am needed,
Yep.
when that is needed. And so what we found in our organization was one, we did a survey of our team members, and these were those in our office. We did some training, and then we asked them to rank themselves. This would allow us to be able to trend our numbers over time. And we asked people, are you a super user? And to identify what that means. And we pulled between that survey and people we knew, we're at, I think as of yesterday, we're at about 16 individuals that are actively in that super user category for us that are working on projects that are respective to their individual disciplines. And so they are testing, piloting, kind of building things on their own. And what then we're taking and looking from that group is a couple of things. What are their developments that they're making, and can we spread those across all others that may be in that certain role? So how are they doing that others can do it? Because what we're finding is if you can put it into somebody's workflow, they will adopt it much faster than trying to do it completely outside of their workflow.
Yeah.
And so these individuals are giving us that intel. This is how I'm doing it in my workflows today, and I'm taking advantage of it. They're coming up with things like, here's a use case that I've got. And they are even sharing it with each other. And they're on a Teams channel and they're saying, I'm trying to do this. Has anybody done something kind of similar to it? And they're doing that on the side. Now,
Yeah.
I will tell you, my friends in IT, very uncomfortable with the fact that this group is doing this.
Huh.
And we've got all sorts of reasons for that. There's security, there's the data, there's what are they doing, there's the fact that this is, normally this was like our BI team was doing this stuff, and now we've enabled this group to do it. And even as of late as yesterday, I was refereeing a discussion between somebody in our IT organization and one of our super users when our IT person found out, you're doing what? And how did you get access to that? And where did you get that? And how is that going? And it's like, well, step back, because we don't want to crush some of this. We've got to enable some of it, but it's hard on both sides. I can see it from both sides on this in terms of giving up that all of that has to sit in the IT organization and being able to take it from there. So far, these 16 people they're working through things and they're making magic happen, and they're starting to populate other ideas across the board. So it's going to be fun to see what they do.
There's a discussion I've had with a half dozen tech companies now that are actually pretty far in advance, almost to a company. They've all moved away from measuring individual usage and focused much more on how many teams have a super user. And there's actually recent Atlassian data on this one too that says you get a dramatic boost. Because let's face it, not everybody's a builder, not everybody's a tinkerer, not everybody's going to have the art to do the sort of reinvention stuff. And so getting one of those in every team in every instance makes a difference. You probably, though, too, and Danny, I'll come to you next on this, but Emily, you probably had to put some guardrails in place. I'll
Mhm.
drop in the chat. This is a column I did on a company called Circle. They're a regulated fintech, publicly traded, obviously under immense scrutiny, stable coin stuff. So what they had to do is they wanted everybody using it, but what they had to do is put in, limitations to what people could use,
Mhm.
what data they could access
Yep.
to avoid the explosion of general counsel and CIO going, "You did what?" Along the way. So would love to know what you've done on that front.
Yeah, we've really kept them in the Microsoft environment right now, and a few other environments that are really secure for us that we've done the data governance where we feel really comfortable with what is there. These groups don't have access to full enterprise data, and they have to use our tools. So they can't be using their own Claude accounts and doing it from that standpoint. They have to use our organizational own ones, so that way we manage that. What we are starting to do is also we're getting a report of what they're working on. And that way, then there is awareness before they get too far on, all right, is that something that's going to create an issue? So those have been kind of the guardrails that we've had with them to be able to, it was really around the security piece. And really being clear around what problems are we trying to solve and keeping them using our own. We have, and they have to sign off that they understand they cannot use their personal devices. They can't go out and use other things. And that anything that they develop while they're doing it on our time is property of the Waldinger Corporation.
Yes.
It is not their own idea that then they get to go out and sell. So it's also protecting that internal kind of IP component.
That's great. That's great. The quick follow-up from Tulia. Are you recognizing and awarding these people, these 16 folks?
Yes, we are. And we're starting to think about how do we do that a little bit further. So right now we're giving them all time. They get time set aside to be able to, because capacity is always an issue, to be able to do that. But then looking at for some of them that have scaled, that have ideas that can scale, looking at some financial rewards for them to be able to recognize what they've brought to our certain departments.
uh, Cindy, Danny, and Emily know this. I've got a set of another dozen slides that sits behind this stuff that's got like all these things that these guys are describing as best practices and how they're rooted in research. But you're all putting them out there anyway. So we don't even need to go there. There is like the time is such a huge element to this, not only for the champions, but for teams themselves. Like a lot of people are starting to think about how do I take whatever my team is and think about how to do the equivalent of demo days or demo hours that happens in a software development culture, which is once a week, there's an hour on the calendar where all of us on a team are sharing with each other what we're doing, learning from each other, gently critiquing stuff because there are ways you can do things better. And that sort of individual time for the builders is essential. But getting teams in it means you got to have some space in the calendar for it to happen. Danny, what are you guys seeing in terms of how you're driving? Like, are there people within your organization that are drivers? And we can also get into the HR bot side of things and what you're doing with your broader population.
So before we jump in, that one quick thing regarding the guardrails, what Emily mentioned regarding the internal guardrails, that's exactly what we do. But one of the things that the questions I see is about the frontier models versus local models, where we are working for an inward app, we are pushing towards a frontier model, but we have a BAA signed with them to ensure that the data that we share is not used for any kind of modeling, learning, and that's one use case. And for the inward, which is our products that we develop, sorry, outward, the products that we develop, we follow a similar kind of a path, but with the advent of frontier versus local models, we are
There you go.
trying to test more of that as well. But it's a little early stage, just trying to see if that can be deployed in an AWS Bedrock or something and go in that direction. With regards to the question, Brian, that you talked with how we promote or look for projects, it's really those projects that are really going to add more value, they get escalated, and then we evaluate them, and those get decided going forward. And if there is a project that's a failure because of, although it has been vetted through the channels and it's still a failure due to implementation or we are not meeting our expected outcome, then we're happy to say not now. We might have to come back and revisit it because this might not be the right candidate. So
Who does that? Rob asked this question pretty directly. Like when you see
yeah,
AI failures, how do you make sure that you've got oversight over them and pulling back and
so
accountability
really
for their
this,
quality?
yeah, and really the success of this is I mentioned about the departments that are really, so for example, this might be a company-wide proposal and the projects might be from 5 different departments. One department came up with this and we said, okay, this is going to add value because of this reasons for our evaluation criteria. But they are the ones who can decide, they are the SMEs, that this is success or failure, or this is just going to create more work. So we leave that to them at that point in time because everybody else provided the technology insights, the best practices, the guardrails, what to do, what not to do. But if that's something that is not, the process is not helping them out, it's useless.
Yeah,
Sorry, being blunt over here, but yeah.
yeah. You had one of these in your HR bot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So great example, and would like to share that is with the request came through and we decided we'll build a HR bot because that's really the one which saves us a lot of time, a lot of repetitive questions. So we needed to understand what the workflow was, what we are trying to change, and what kind of questions we try to address. So employees ask leave questions constantly, and FMLA, state paid leaves, COBRA, short-term disability. It's perfect for a chatbot use case, right? That's what you would think. High volume, repetitive, fully documented. But guess what? We overlooked certain family-related questions that vary by state. California has certain different rules, and our employees are US and Canada everywhere, so we did not fully account for those jurisdictional differences, and understanding and redesigning the workflow was one important step that for us to go and implement it. And don't get me wrong, this is more of a technology problem now. We can solve this. When an employee calls, we need to vet them through, do some kind of an identity proofing to say, okay, Danny is calling from the state of Virginia. Now let me set the right context and get through that. But at that point in time, the API is available and the latency, we did not think through all of that. But I'm just giving you an example. It failed, you reiterate and come back to the next version of it. And so we basically handle questions that were okay to be wrong or where we can recover from them, right? It cannot handle the questions that were being wrong, and put us in a legal position. So we avoided all of that. And as you guys all know about the famous issue with Air Canada, where they tried to say it was a bot that did it, but that's not really the case because I think the court system denied it right away, saying no, that is not the way you would answer it. So again, that's an example, and where we went wrong, there was a problem. We reinvented and said, okay, here are the guardrails. Here's what we are sectioning off. That still helped to be turned out to be valuable, but there is a version 2 of this that will come out. So that goes towards the AI failure. You would say this is a partial failure, but then you change the workflow and then made the change and move forward.
Yeah. I think that's also part of how you get at the cost control too, right? Because those
Correct.
guardrails and those stupid. My favorite example isn't the Air Canada one is great. My favorite example though is the Chipotle bot that people externally were using to do coding. Um, because it's an open bot and it's sitting on top of a
Yeah,
good model, so why wouldn't you, right? Like
yeah,
because nobody at Chipotle ever thought that our Ask Chipotle a Question bot would be used to write software code. So
yeah.
there are things people will do to get at it.
The bot can answer fluently and still can be wrong, right?
Exactly. You guys are both growth companies, but how have you handled the sort of much more bog standard employee fear about this is coming for our jobs? Emily, you want to go first on that one, or
Yeah, I
Danny?
can take that.
Go for it.
That's really why we were super intentional about saying that when we were doing the million hours worth of capacity, it was about creating capacity for our current teams. It wasn't about trying to reduce the number of team members. Now, so we've been messaging that really intentionally. I think though where that comes and where the concern that we now have is for a number of our team members, some of the new technology that's out there means that we will change their job. And can they do the new job? And so that is a focus that we're starting to get to, which is how do we upskill that current workforce that we have today to be able to do new work that's in the future? And what is that? What do we need to be doing to make that happen? And how are we being intentional about that at the same time? That's where it's really hard. You take somebody
Yeah.
who's been in their role for a long time, knows it really well, and you suddenly make them feel like a new team member, they kind of resist on that. And so I don't think there is as much fear in our organization about losing our jobs as it is, will I be good at my job going forward? And that really is looking at how do we have kind of more of that development? How are we being intentional about those things? We don't have that all figured out yet, but that is something that is on the docket for me looking ahead.
Love that. Danny?
For us, we started with the outward, which is creating a new product in our AI receptionist world. And that was really our moment to create a new product, get the team accepted. So it was less of a challenge for us, to be very frank. And we were augmenting the customer employee behavior with the tools that we had developed. So there was no replacement. It was just providing a better service and augmenting the service.
Emily's example there is maybe closer to what a lot of people are experiencing. There's a couple studies that show like depending on whose study you look at, 5 to 15% of jobs over the next 3 to 5 years might get wiped out. Some people think it's as low as 2 to 3. But the much bigger thing is the number of jobs that are going to get transformed. Like 50% of office jobs are going to undergo some form of transformation. And what you face is what you're describing, Emily, which is it's identity threat.
Mhm.
For someone who's been in a role that's been dependent on specific knowledge for 20 years. When you think about skills for the future, what kind of skills do you think are going to be important?
I do think critical thinking is going to be important. That emotional intelligence and some of those, am I able to communicate effectively? Am I able to collaborate? Some of the basic stuff that we've talked about for years are going to become the things that we really, really need because the AI models will be able to crunch the numbers for us faster. And it's can you analyze that? But that what they can't take away is I need to be able to coach and develop you, Brian, and be able to give you that, or I need to be able to create an exceptional customer experience. And so when I interact with them, I've got to be able to communicate effectively. So it's going to be more of those quote unquote, I hate the word, but soft skills
Yeah,
that I think are going to be even more important in the future. And I worry about that because I'm a mom of, I have three, I have 20s and a teens, and they grew up staring at their phone and doing all the stuff on their phone. And I'm like, we need to figure out how to make sure that they still know how to have that EQ in with their daily work.
yeah. Danny, what's your take on skills for the future?
Echo the same sentiment, emotional intelligence, soft skills, ability to network, things that we are doing right now. It's just valuable in my opinion. And on top of that, really, there is a piece that I'll share later on is our higher education systems are not evolving fast enough. And I can talk about it all day long, but that's the problem that I'm seeing where we were under the pressure already about improving our education system. Now AI is just changing this quite significantly, and people are latching on towards nano degrees. When I go for hiring, don't ask which school do you come from. Yes, Stanford would make a big difference, but what can you do? What can you do on this project? That's where it's more oriented towards what can they do. And if the solution that can they can develop through using AI, fine, but then are they able to troubleshoot and debug it?
Yeah,
That's the key thing, right? I mean, if you're making things faster and do it faster by all means, but do you understand what you're doing? And that is the key thing. And the last mile problem when there was you can have a code working and written by AI, but then if there is a debugging issue that comes through, are they able to debug the code and fix it? So that those are the things that are going to be more critical, and training your existing team members and ensuring they understand that is very critical.
yeah. The changes that I'm seeing broadly, like because I work with a lot of tech companies, are pretty huge when it comes to even things like when I was leading engineering teams at Google, honestly, your ability to communicate was secondary or tertiary on the list. Right? Now it's essential. Almost everyone has changed their standard, even though they still want really good engineering skills. They also need good communication skills. They need to be good collaborators. They need to show evidence they've worked in projects before that are complex, that cut across multiple teams. And you can no longer get away with not having the soft skills are actually durable skills as we do it. And Eric, you're spot on the Bill Gates thing. I'm worried about entry level jobs. I'm actually even more worried about the sort of learning and development getting cut off at the base because we have real risks around how much we're able to put into supporting younger workers as they're coming into the workforce and the risk that they default to AI as opposed to getting support from leaders who've been there before.
Mhm.
Right. And just to add to what Anika just posted, we asked for what they've built. Give us your GitHub, GitLab link to see and present on that, and just not list it out there, explain what you've built, and then we do question on top of that rather than their resume.
Yeah. Yeah. Udemy actually did this, by the way, Annika. Everything, I think they got everybody but their CTO off of degrees. So they actually, I mean, Danny, to the point of Stanford being an extra credit, they actually stripped out schools and degrees entirely, with the exception of computer science folks, where they did require the degree still. And they were looking at skills as the basis for it. So the intake mechanism before it went to a hiring manager would strip out a whole bunch of context. And then you'd have to actually plumb the person for what they could actually do, as opposed to what they theoretically learned. So kind of interesting, and that's a massive shift. Karen Fashenda, who was the CPO at Udemy at the time, described going through that as arduous, being a good term. Any final questions for my panelists? I'm going to get us to, I've got one last thing to tell all of you. Like, this is all the data that I had ready to go, and these guys had all of it already. I am part of my job is I'm editor-in-chief, executive in residence at an outfit called Charter. We're a future of work media outfit. Cindy, I know, is a fan. Emily's a fan. We're running our workplace summit in New York City, October 21st. It's also broadcast live online. The thing that we are announcing on Monday that I'll tell you about today is I'm getting to do something I've been waiting 3 years to do, which is relaunch some new research in this space with an old partner of mine who's a researcher. We're going to talk about AI and its impact on workers in a way that I think is handy, because it's not coming from a consulting firm or a technology firm. So we're going to do that. We'll also have a great set of people up on stage talking about it. There's a QR code. We'll send the stuff out afterwards. But would love to see anybody there who can make the trip. Or we'll see you online if we're doing it.
And Brian,
Cindy,
I think you said that I'd send that out in the email that I send to everyone with the deck and the
yep,
recording. And it looks like there's a 50% off that you can actually take advantage of, right?
yep, that's right.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Great job, Brian, Emily, Danny. Awesome.
You guys are great.
Yeah.
Spectacular learnings. Really
Yes.
appreciate it. Appreciate everybody
Super,
being here.
super. Look for the email from me, guys, and thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you all. Thank you.